Autumn, and I'm a certified clinical nutritionist. I have my master's in nutrition and human performance, my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics. I just love food and love how much it can impact lives when used correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's kind of where we're going to take this conversation today. So for you, and let's get into movement. What's your favorite way to stay active and train and, stay on top of your health and fitness?
It's been quite a journey. It's been all over the place. So back the first time I was an athlete growing up when, I did volleyball and basketball and soccer and swim team and all of that. And then, senior year of high school is when I really started to focus more on training, and I trained for my first triathlon. And then from there, I really got into the whole triathlon and long distance lifestyle. I did that throughout college, even was for a brief stint, part of the UCSB triathlon team. And then now I went through lifting stage, went through just a bunch of different things. But what I found is really important just to always try new things, and whatever it is that's going to make me happy. And just if it's not making me happy anymore, then moving on. But definitely an emphasis on walking now after all of that.
Yes. So at that point, you say you focus more on training senior year of high school. What was your kind of, experience nutrition-wise, as a teenager, moving into now kind of food is important, and then making it one of your top priorities in your life? What were those phases?
Yeah, I've always had sort of an esoteric view on food in general, just where I always loved food, not necessarily for the health component. When I was younger, but I have memories when I was in sixth grade and saving up money that my parents would give me and walking down to the Vons down the street and just spending a long time. I mean, Vons, not even a nice place, but spending a lot of time going through and just figuring out what it is I would want to make and what I could create. So I always just loved food from the start. But then it wasn't until my senior year of high school when I was getting more into training, and when I started to notice a difference in how I could feel based off of just exercise, I was like, okay, well, if exercise could have this impact, what impact can, the food that I physically put in my body every single day have? I always grew up with my dad's chiropractor, so I always had this more natural approach to health anyway. And then during that time in high school is when I was experiencing a lot of anxiety for the first time, or at least really understanding that it was anxiety. So I wanted to see how I could heal my own body just through the foods that I was putting in my body every day.
Right. And when you have anxiety, most people think what are the different ways I can help with this? Meditation, therapy, all of that. So how did you make the connection of, well, maybe I should look at my nutrition to try and fix my anxiety?
I mean, the first is probably what most people will associate with anxiety, and that's caffeine. So the first thing, I was like, okay, well, maybe caffeine is making me feel really anxious, because, it's that same type of feeling if you have too much caffeine, that you can feel really shaky, and a lot of the same feelings that you get when you feel anxious. I mean, I learned later down the line that it wasn't necessarily the caffeine, but that was where I first really made the association between, oh, okay, food can have an impact on my mental state as well. And then I really started to just, research. I mean, at this time I was in college and I was learning biochemistry, organic chemistry, physiology. And I was like, okay, well, this stuff will have an impact on how I feel if it gets broken down to this chemical nature that actually has a physical response on the body. And that physical response has a mental response as well. I think a lot of people don't realize that the physical is connected to the mental, because the mental is a physical reaction within the body. That is where it really all tied in for me. And then I really started to get into the field of nutrition psychology, and that's a huge booming field, and it's something that I get to work on with a lot of my clients and myself, which is amazing. But yeah, it's what's cool about, I think, health and wellness in general is that it's never just a light bulb moment and everything falls into place. It's like you start to, build upon your knowledge and build upon what you know.
Yeah, and experimentation. That's a big one. This doesn't work. Okay, we'll try something else. And then you notice little parts of it that work, so then you just tweak it. And a lot of people, I feel, are looking for that quick fix and trying to figure out, oh, well, this worked for this person, so that's going to work for me. But it's not like that at all.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also can be kind of, a little upsetting for me when I see other people who have tried one thing and maybe that one thing wasn't the best advice. Someone who didn't have all of the understanding of how the body works gave them advice. They're like, oh, well, food can heal you, just do this, but it's completely the wrong advice.
Yeah.
And then they have this bad taste in their mouth of, okay, well, then I can't heal myself naturally. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people experience that because they do go to, you can just look so much stuff. So I talk about this in my workshop. There's so much information, but not a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, that's why you do what you do, because, normal people who have regular jobs or this isn't their focus, like they're not spending their time doing this research. So that's why it's important to go to people who study this and this is what they know, live and breathe. So if you get frustrated that you can't figure it out by yourself, that's not the end of the world. That's not a problem. That's to be
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah.
So can you share, do you have a personal experience where you did notice your mental state shift? So you started using, nutrition to help with the anxiety. Was there a time where you really realized, like, okay, this is working? Was there a point in time there?
I think that same thing with a lot of my clients. People don't realize something's working until they stop doing it and they realize that they aren't feeling good.
Ah,
And that happened to me definitely because, weirdly throughout college, I was like the weird kid. I didn't really party, I mean, in the first half, yeah, but the second half, I really didn't. It didn't make me feel good. That's when I first noticed, okay, alcohol does not make me feel great, especially in excessive amounts.
mm,
So I would spend my time like making homemade food and really fueling my body right. And so I was feeling pretty great. My anxiety was going down. And then after that, I traveled for, after I graduated, I traveled for about 2 months in Europe. And I mean, when you're traveling at a young age, you're on a budget. And so you're eating
right,
very budgety foods.
right.
It's all just junk and nothing good and just super high sugar, super processed. You're always on the go. So you're eating whatever's, oh my gosh, I used to love the free food they would give you on the airplane. Because I was like, yes, I don't have to pay for anything. And it'd be like a disgusting like ham croissant sandwich. And I mean, like I would eat it because I didn't have the money to reject it. But with that built upon each other for 2 months, I was definitely like during that time not feeling good, but it didn't really set in until I got home. And it was the day that I got home and I was go, go, go the whole time. So I don't think my mind had time to catch up as well. So then when I got home and I was able to just relax, it's like all of that compounding effect of that high sugar, high fight or flight response type of foods, all of a sudden set in. And I had the worst panic attack of my life where I was out at dinner with my family and I physically felt it's really hard to explain a panic attack unless someone's experienced it, but you just feel like all the sound goes off and that you don't have control of your body. And it's like your heart is racing, but at the same time, you also feel like it's stopping. You feel like you're just dying and you have no logical reason to think that you have, for some reason deep down in your mind, you're like, I'm going to die right now. And that lasted about 2 hours. And so I completely sort of blacked out after that. I don't have a lot of memories from that. Just the feeling of being like, whoa, like this is going to be the last sunset I ever see. Like that intense feeling of this is the end. And then once I, came to the next day really, because it's like, I don't even remember anything else from that day. Remember the next day being like, that is not living. That is not how we're supposed to live and feel. Like I need to go back to feeling good because that's surviving barely. That's not even surviving. Yeah. And I think it's kind of sad because a lot of people, we think that that's normal to feel anxious all the time. We think that it's normal to have panic attacks because in social media, we all joke about, oh, I'm so anxious and panicking and whatever. Like it's become so normal that people think it's normal.
Yeah. And it's definitely not. So I've had panic attacks as well and spiraling and all of that. But every person feels it different too. So when you say you feel like, you're quote unquote quote dying, in what sense of that did you mean? Like you physically felt like your body was dying, or you felt like like your mind and the experiences that were happening around you were going to cause you?
It's That's the crazy thing, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to explain unless you've been at that point, but it's like, deep down that this is the end. Like that it's like a sense of overwhelming panic where it's so consuming that you have no logical response to it,
Right.
but you just know that you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, like, you can have someone logically who has never experienced panic attack be talking to you, be like, you're fine, you're not going to die. But
Right.
it doesn't register because it's you responding to your own body. You're in that extreme state of fight or flight where you don't have any other option but to think like that, at least in that moment.
Right. Right. Right.
Mhm.
So you only got out of that by like going to sleep and waking up. Like, how were you able to fall asleep that night? Do you remember that?
Well, thankfully, it's some other family members of mine experience it as well. They've been able to handle it, especially lately with a lot of the strategies that I've learned and developed. But again, the really best people to talk to when you're experiencing a panic attack are those who have already experienced panic attacks because they know what it feels like. But I remember my dad was there and he'd had panic attacks in the past as well. And so he just took me on a walk and was just talking to me, like, just like, not trying to talk to me about that situation because that's the
Right.
last thing you want,
Right.
but just talking to me. And I don't remember what we talked about. I don't even know if we really talked that much, but I know that we were gone for about 2 hours because the rest of my family was done with dinner and we were already back home. So I don't remember going to bed that night, but I'm sure it was difficult.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's crazy.
So for, I guess, transitioning now back into the nutrition side of it, for people who are anxious or busy or say they don't have the time to eat healthy or do this and that, like, how can they start to, I guess, work on their nutrition? Is there a particular method that you like, or that kind of got you going?
I mean, what's really interesting about nutrition is that it really is not a one size fits all. Everyone has different food preferences, different cultures, different needs, different goals. So everyone is going to have something totally different. But the easiest first place to start is just cutting out any type of processed sugar, at least while you're in the healing process. I mean,
Mm.
that's just going to trigger that state of fight or flight. In fact, the reason why it does that is because, when you have a rush of sugar, a rush of processed carbohydrates, it causes a really severe spike in your blood glucose level and then also a severe drop. So it's a spike and fall. And when you have that fall is called hypoglycemia, and that has the same exact feelings and symptoms as an anxiety attack. So it can trigger those feelings of an anxiety attack. So just eliminating that alone is one of the best first steps.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many tools, like we talked about intermittent fasting, improving sleep quality with nutrient timing, but that's why I work with so many people on that, because it is such a more hands-on experience, especially if you're looking to heal something.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you're looking for more general health, then that's a little easier. But if you're looking to heal something, it really is a layering process, just like what we were talking about. It's not just changing everything at once, because tell an anxious person
Yep.
that they change everything at once and they'll be like, okay, bye.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned intermittent fasting. What are the benefits of intermittent fasting? And I feel like since I do that method when I need to like clean up a little bit, or I have my clients start off with it, what are the benefits that you have discovered from intermittent fasting?
Well, one really great thing it does, especially when you do it the right way, because there are a lot of wrong ways to do it. One thing that it does is it's been proven to help with insulin sensitivity. So if you're insulin resistant, that's where you can also get, more of those severe spikes and falls. So the more insulin sensitive you can be, the overall better health that you'll have. But also when it comes to anxiety purposes, the more stable blood glucose levels you'll have. And if you have those stable blood glucose levels, it doesn't trigger as much of those anxiety attacks or anxious feelings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I, I have probably about 60 hours worth of intermittent fasting videos on my YouTube channel. So I could rabbit hole down this, but there's, I mean, just to bring it back to talking about mental health purposes, biggest thing that I've seen is that it does stabilize that blood glucose level and make you more insulin sensitive, which really helps to prevent those anxiety feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you say to the people who, they have like a crazy schedule, or it's very inconsistent, or they just say like, I can't go that long, like they have all these limiting beliefs that stop them from trying it, or like they can't figure out the schedule of what to do. How can they do it?
The schedule can totally take time. I mean, it can take time depending on each person to figure out what will work for them. And not everyone should have the same amount of fasting period. And so it totally depends. But on the note of what you said on people who feel like they can't go that long, that's actually the biggest sign that somebody should use intermittent fasting. Because if you can't go, I mean, even 14 hours without eating, and that's including 8 hours, hopefully, of sleeping, then that shows that your cells are not very metabolically flexible, which if you don't have metabolic flexibility, then that's one really easy way to really decrease your energy levels, to get brain fog, to not be able to tap into fat burning. So if you're looking for any type of weight loss as well, or athletic goals, then that is the first thing that you should be doing.
Right. And is there a particular hour split you like to start people off with when they're getting into it?
It depends on the person, because if you are more metabolically flexible by nature, where, you have been following proper nutrient timing in the past, and you don't have very high processed carbohydrate intake, and you're already getting great sleep, then you can start off with a longer fasting period first. But if you do have, a standard American diet, or you're having high processed carbohydrates, lots of sugar, if you drink sugary Starbucks drinks every day, like all those things that'll make it so that you are more metabolically inflexible, then that's where you'd want to start off slower. So with like a 12-hour fast in the beginning, just to get used to it. 'Cause, most people, especially in America, we aren't even going 12 hours.
Right. Right. And so people, if you try a longer fast and you break it, don't punish yourself. Don't feel like you're a failure. Just bring back your window a little bit and then get the success there, and then start chipping away as your body starts to adapt. Because I get that all the time with like girls like, oh, I can't do the fasting, like it's too long, or like I broke it and I feel bad that I did that, and just adjust.
Yeah, and that's something I talk about a lot with, the people who utilize my intermittent fasting program. I tell them to make sure that they are actually eating until satiated and following the proper nutrient timing, because it shouldn't be difficult after even for the most metabolically flexible person, even after a week or two, it really shouldn't be difficult to extend your fast, because your body is already, being able to fuel itself and have the food it needs in order to stay satiated, because that's the biggest problem. So many people are pairing it with caloric restriction. And that's just, a recipe for feeling starved.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of girls, even in that window, I have experienced, they tell me that they can't even get to like their kind of recommended calorie amount for the day. Like if they have their basal metabolic rate, let's say it's like 1200, like let's just use that number. Like a lot of girls, even in the window that they're eating, are eating less than 1,000 calories, which is absolutely like a big no-no. You should not be eating less than 1,000 calories per day just to, sustain life and be able to function. So for people who are trying the window, feel like they can't get enough food in that window, maybe they are busy or they're not allowed to eat at work or anything like that. You talk about eating for satiety. Like, so what are those foods that you recommend that help people feel full, or how they can kind of bulk up a meal to make sure that they are getting enough in that window?
Yeah, that's a good question. I first want to go back to the calorie thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if, again, what I talk about with my people who use the intermittent fasting program, I do not recommend counting calories whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It has been proven time and time again that it actually has no correlation with weight loss, really, at least long term. And in fact, there's a study that came out showing the Biggest Loser contestants where, they were on, the weight loss, what were they? I don't even know, like 1,200 calories a day. And maybe even less for some days. I'm not sure. But they found that even 8 years later, or however long later, their basal metabolic rate significantly went down. And that is why calorie counting does not work long term. Multiple reasons. First of all, because you can't really ever know for sure how many calories you're burning.
Right.
Second of all, it doesn't really matter because your hormones will dictate whether or not you're storing or you're burning. So it doesn't really matter if you are having, 1200 versus 1800, if you are in storing mode or if you are in fat burning mode.
Right.
And then lastly, I found that it really does have this psychological effect of increasing stress level. And increasing stress level when you are counting calories causes that increase in cortisol, which causes that weight gain on the belly. So ultimately, not only does it not work, it's not accurate, but it goes against your goals. So I definitely don't recommend, to my people that they ever count calories. Rather, eating until satiated. And that's something that can take time to figure out, because we are so used to eating based off of a number and not off of how our bodies feel. Yeah. So it definitely does take time, which is why I do really go over a lot of those strategies inside of the program. Right. But yeah, eating, using the proper nutrient timing that I discussed in the program, having the proper foods at the proper times, and making sure that you're not just having these small meals just because you want to try and reduce calories, because ultimately that's going to work against your goals. I always show on, my YouTube videos and my Instagram stories and such, my salads are bigger than like my head. So
the bowls,
exactly. So starting to just tap into that knowledge of your body and how it actually feels versus relying on a number to tell you when you should be full. It's going to be actually a much more accurate way, weirdly enough, than relying on those numbers.
Yeah. And your body sometimes won't even absorb all those nutrients that you're getting. Like, it could just be going straight through you. Like, if you're not pairing the right foods with the right, micronutrients as well, like, your body's not going to absorb it properly. So totally agree with you on that point. So going into now how they can, feel satiated, like, obviously healthy fats are going to, sit in your stomach longer, take longer to digest, and make you feel fuller for longer. What are your go-to, like, healthy fats or foods that help you feel full?
Yeah, in a lot of the smoothies that I create for the program, I use things like chia seeds and hemp seeds and peanut butter, almond butter, coconut butter. Those are all really great to load up in a smoothie. Mm-hmm. And just getting a variety of foods, really. We're so used to having a lot of the same foods because it's easy and we're used to it, right? Yeah. But if we stick to a lot of the same foods, there's actually a huge diverse amount of fats as well that we need to be getting. Not technically need to be getting, we only need to be getting 2 of the fats, but there are a massive amount of fats that we could be utilizing in order to actually help our body turn off their hunger hormones. Yeah. And if we're just having if we're just having avocado, just avocado, that's just one really type of fat that we're getting. So I just really recommend getting a variety of them and making sure that you're having them at the right time.
Yeah. I love that. So kind of wrapping up and summarizing and putting this in perspective, what is your, I guess, 1 to 2 little nuggets of advice for people who want to get back in shape, lose weight, feel good, feel like themselves again? Maybe they're a former athlete. Maybe they just know that they have potential and they're not maximizing or operating at that level that they could be. What is your advice to them?
First of all, stop relying on food companies to tell you what's healthy. They have a vested interest in you believing that their product is healthy. And that is, I have a whole video on the 10 health foods that aren't actually healthy on my YouTube channel. And it's pretty eye-opening when you actually look into what's in these foods that are claiming that they're healthy, that they're actually just destroying your health goals and making you have low energy and just mood swings, just all these things that aren't actually going to make you feel good, aren't going to serve your goals, and definitely is not going to help you tap into fat burning mechanisms. So just don't put your trust in the food system because they have a vested interest in you buying their stuff and believing that they're healthy. Also, just making sure that if you are going to use intermittent fasting, that you do use it the right way. I had one family friend of mine where she had some hormone imbalance issues. So her naturopath told her, hey, you should use intermittent fasting. She's like, okay, great. And, most even naturopaths, which are amazing, they just don't necessarily have the time to go over the type of, consulting that is involved in putting together a plan that will actually fit that person and what they're looking for. So she went to use intermittent fasting and ended up putting her hormones even more out of whack because she just didn't know what she was doing. She just thought it was like, okay, I'm just going to just not eat for a little bit amount of time. And that's not how it works. You need to make sure that you're also looking at the proper nutrient timing, that you're looking at eating it all satiated, that you're making sure you're working at the right times of day. Like there's so many factors that go along with it that it's just, you can't just simplify something. Your health is a complex system, just like what we're talking about, adding on the layers too. So just making sure you're doing it right, either, working with a professional who actually knows what they're talking about, using the intermittent fasting program that I mentioned that really goes over the nutrient timing, but just making sure you're using it right, because it is a great tool. It can be really used well to help to heal your body, to help get those fitness goals, but you have to actually do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a great, just with anything, like quick, easy fix just doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, just like I'm sure with you with training,
Yeah.
You can't just go out and just run all day and expect to have muscles.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. You have to have a plan that is actually tailored to your goals, just like what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last thing would be, we ask this to every guest who comes on, in terms of the name of our program. So what does it mean to you to train like a gymnast? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, I knew you in high school, right? So whenever I would think of you in high school, I would think of like, damn, she's strong. And, I was not very strong in high school. I mean, I'm still pretty wiry. I'm working on it. But I think of it as just being strong and being able, like not just being the meathead at the gym that's lifting weights, but being able to use your body in a way that's not just lifting weights, but, being active too.
Right. I love that. Functional fitness.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right. So then just to sign off, go ahead and explain how people can get a hold of you or where they can, ask you questions.
Yeah. I am on Instagram at Autumn Nutrition. So Autumn and then ELLE_nutrition. My website is autumnnutrition.com. I have a YouTube channel with, like I mentioned, hours and hours worth of footage that you guys can check out with a lot of questions that you probably have also on intermittent fasting answered. So you can just search Autumn Bates and I'll pop right up. And then, I also have a private Facebook group, but that's for my AM peeps who are using the intermittent fasting program. So those are all my main things.
Awesome. I love it. Well, if anybody has any questions, definitely reach out to her, find her on social, and, contact and take a look at her programs. If you do need extra, unique help as well, she's also a wonderful resource for you there. And for those of you who are Los Angeles locals, Autumn and I are going to be doing a workshop at Lorna Jane Manhattan Beach on June 22nd. That's a Saturday. It's kind of early. It's 8 a.m., but that's right before the store opens. And if you attend the little workshop, you also get a discount on Lorna Jane items in the store.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So you'll get to do a little HIIT workout with Train Like a Gymnast, and you'll get to learn more about kind of like mental health and nutrition from Autumn and ask us questions. So
how long's the workout?
The workout, I'll make it like 20 minutes.
Cool. That's about how long I'll be able to last.
Yeah. Yeah. HIIT is really, really, really fast, really effective. And the awesome part with HIIT, you'll get to keep burning calories even while you're sitting there listening to us. So I hope to see you guys there, and I want to get a good group coming. So you can bring a friend. You're just going to have to register on the Eventbrite, but also I'm sure they'll let you in day of. It's just for them to be able to plan. So
perfect. So much for having me on. This is so fun.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on.